Hello and welcome to Squared Loops. I'm Pete. This is part of the Accelerator 1 course that will cover Node.js, Docker, and Azure Kubernetes Service, also known as AKS. In this video, we are going to cover installing Windows Terminal, Chocolatey, which is a package management tool, Git, a distributed version control system, GitHub.com, a cloud service that allows us to store and share our code, and Visual Studio Code, which is an integrated development environment, otherwise known as an IDE. Let's go. The first tool we're going to install is called Windows Terminal, and we can download that via the Microsoft Store. Once the store has loaded, click Search and type Windows Terminal. There are two versions, the Stable and the Preview. We're going to use the Preview, so select that now. When the page has loaded, you can view more about the tool and install it using the blue button. I've already installed it, so we will launch it now. Once the application has launched, we want to pin it to the taskbar. That means that we can access it more easily in future. You can see in the top left that we're running this as the standard account, so we will exit now, then rerun as an admin. This gives us more permissions to access the system as we need to. Right-click on the terminal, right-click Windows Terminal again, and then run as administrator. When prompted, if you wish to continue, click Yes. You are now running Windows Terminal as an administrator, as shown in the top left. As this is a new machine, we have no Windows PowerShell profile. We will create one now, and this will allow us to store various settings about where we install our tools in future. The code snippets that we are using you can get from the blog in the description below. When we have finished running these commands, you can see that the profile exists. We are now going to install Chocolatey. This is a package manager for Windows and allows us to install various pieces of software via the PowerShell prompt and not needing to go through various wizards. To get started, simply click the Get Started button and you can read the instructions. For now, we simply need to copy the command line that's being presented, and we will run that in our administrator terminal. In just a few moments, that will download and install Chocolatey, and it will be available on our computer to install all of our other tools. You can see at this point that it has downloaded. There are a few warnings which we can ignore. It does make a note though that we need to reload our profile that we created earlier. That is because Chocolatey installs some helper functions and we can now take advantage of those. A simple example is Choco list local only, which will show all of the packages that we've installed with Chocolatey. At this time, it is only Chocolatey itself. We can now go back into Chocolatey and search for some packages that we want to install. The first of these will be Git. The first time that you use Chocolatey to download any software, you will be shown a screen with some information about how you should use Chocolatey. We will go ahead and click I understand to accept the terms and conditions. We can see that the Git package has been located. We will click copy and then paste into Windows Terminal. We add -y to accept any prompts that may appear. The reason we do this is that the Git installation and many other installations are made up of multiple packages, and we would be prompted to install each one individually. With the -y, it's taken for granted that we approve all installations. Git will now be downloaded and installed using the defaults. It should only take a few minutes. Once the software has installed, The output will show that Chocolatey has installed 3 of 3 packages successfully. It will also show that the environment variables may have changed, so we should either close and reopen PowerShell or refresh our shell now. As an example, we will try and run git now without refreshing our environment, and it will show an error that git is not recognized. By refreshing our environment and trying to run git again, you will see this time it succeeds and returns the version of git that has been installed by Chocolatey. We now need to set up our git username and email address. This is so that when we push commits to GitHub, it knows who we are pushing our commits as. We will now make a folder to store all of our code. I am putting this in a C:"git folder, but you can place your folder wherever makes sense for you. Another handy piece of software is PoshGit. This will allow us to see what we are doing on the PowerShell terminal more easily as we move around Git. We will install this from Chocolatey. Just as before, we will search for PoshGit, click on the copy icon and paste into Windows Terminal, adding the Y so that we do not need to accept every prompt. This will download PoshGit. It is quite small and should be quite quick. And at the end, we should have the same messages around the number of packages installed and also that we would need to refresh our environment, and in this case also our profile. The profile being where all of our PowerShell information is kept. We can do that now by typing refresh env and loading the profile with $profile. You will see the terminal has changed and it no longer has the PS prefix. The next thing we will do is visit github.com. This is a cloud version of Git and where we can store all of our code. We will go over this in more detail in future lessons. For now, we will just set up an account. You can sign in or sign up. I already have an account, so I will sign in. You enter your username and password to sign in. With GitHub, there are many public repositories, and we will use one as an example for a very common flow. We will visit the GitHub repository, which contains many files. We will click the fork button, which will take a copy of the repository from GitHub Tools and copy it into Squared Loops, our account. When the copy is complete, you will see on the top left it is now in Squared Loops copy and that it has been copied from GitHub Tools. This copy is completely separate from GitHub Tools version. There are multiple branches in this repository, the main branch being master. This is the old naming convention. We will change this to the now more accepted main branch name. Settings branches shows the current branch. Clicking the pen will allow us to edit from master to main. Press to rename branch to save those changes. You can now see the default branch is main and the other branches remain unaffected. Going back to our repository, you will see a prompt of how we can change our repository if we had already cloned. As we haven't, we can OK and accept that. Click the green code button and then the clipboard to copy the URL for our repository. Returning to terminal, we will now clone or download the code using the git clone command. The code will be copied to our computer and we can change directory into the new repository. The prompt will change to show we are in a Git repository on the main branch with the 3 horizontal lines showing that we are in sync. By typing git status, we can find more information. This shows that we are up to date with the remote branch in github.com. We can now view all of the files that have been downloaded during the Git clone. Let's edit one of those files now using Notepad. We will edit the README file. We can make changes in this file. We will add a different title and some contents. We can then use this to make sure that everything is working as it should in Git. We will save the file with File, Save, and then close the window. Back in the Windows terminal by pressing Enter on the keyboard, we will see the prompt change and show that we now have one modified file, 0 added and 0 deleted. To find more, type git status. This will show that we have non-staged files, and that file is readme.md. It is modified. To stage the file, we use git add and a full stop to add all files that have been changed. The prompt changes to green and shows that the changed file is now staged and is ready to be committed. We will create a commit, which is a snapshot in time, and add a message at the same time, stating what this commit contains. The prompt changes again with a 1 and an arrow pointing up to show that we are now one commit ahead of our remote branch. We can see this with git status. We can push our changes back to github.com by running git push. When we first push back with git push, we'll be asked to sign in. We can use personal access tokens or an interactive sign-in with the browser. We will use the browser this time. The console will show that we are to use the browser to authenticate. Clicking that shows that we have already successfully authenticated. This is because we'd signed into github.com. If we wish to renew our credentials, we can run Credential Manager. This will show us the various credentials already stored on our computer. Here is github.com. We can remove this and try again. This time, when we try git push and prompted to use the browser, we will instead be asked to use our username and password that we used to create our account. Once we've entered those details, click the Sign In button, and you will see the same authentication succeeded message. The prompt shows that everything is up to date, and we can check the Credential Manager now has the credentials stored again. Therefore, we will not be prompted in future. We can go to github.com and refresh our repository to see the changes have been pushed. Here it shows the last commit was pushed by squared loops, the commit message that we added, and also a SHA, which is a unique identifier, just a few minutes ago. If we click on the commits, we can see a better history of what we've done with our commit, and the changes show up on the README file that we had entered. The SHA code we mentioned earlier, 5BC, is a unique code like a timestamp that is stored with every commit we make. If we run git k, a window will appear showing all of the history for this repository. Shows the last commit at the top and the SHA 5BC and some more characters. This shows that the same code is used on our machine and in github.com. This tool also shows information such as what the code change was. If we edit the file again, we can make some more changes. This will then be stored as another commit. We will follow the same process as before. So we will add the changed file. We will create a new commit with a new commit message. We will then run git k again. This time you can see that the remote main remains where it was, and our local main is now one ahead. This shows that we have yet to push the commit. You can also see again the changes that were made with this commit versus the last commit. If we refresh github.com, you can see that our local commit has not been pushed, and it still remains as our first commit. Running git push this time will push the changes to github.com. We're not asked to sign in, and you can see that the SHA has changed from 5BC to 6DB. If we refresh github.com, you will see that the commit message has changed to our new commit and has our new git SHA. This shows that the push has been successful. The README file has also been updated with our additional change. Viewing the history, you can now see our stack of commits that we can continue to add. The next tool we're going to install is a tool called Visual Studio Code. It's a lightweight visual editor that allows us to code in a more seamless way rather than using PowerShell and Notepad. We will use Chocolatey as we did before, search, copy the link, and paste it into the terminal, adding the -y to avoid any additional prompts. This will install some prerequisites as well as Visual Studio Code itself. This shouldn't take too long. Once this completes, we will need to perform these same steps of calling refresh environment and loading our profile. You will see this process is used whenever we install any new tools. So 3 of 3 installed. We will now call the refresh environment. If we run start dot, this will start a new file explorer in the current location. So see GitHub Git. This is a quick way of changing between File Explorer and the prompt. We can use the right-click Open with Visual Studio Code command, or from the terminal itself, code dot will start Visual Studio Code in that location too. On the left-hand side, we have all of the files that we've been using. At the bottom, the branch main, and we can edit the README as we have before. The advantage of using an IDE is that we get color-coded syntax highlighting, as well as other features such as debug and integrated source code. We'll go into this in more detail in another session, but for now you can see that making a change is very quick and easy. After we've changed a file, we can save using Control-S, or on the menu, File, Save All. This will save all open files. We can continue to edit the file, and during the edits, you will notice that on the tab, the README has a circle, a dot that appears to identify that this file has been changed but not yet saved. Control-S or Save All will save and change the dot. In Visual Studio Code, you can have many files open at once. We can open release and other files. You see that the tabs appear across the top, meaning that you can easily move between files. We can close these now. As we make changes and save, we can create commits within the IDE itself without having to return to the PowerShell terminal. This means that the workflow is much quicker and easier. We click on the branching icon on the left-hand menu. The changes are shown for us. We get a nice view of what has changed in this commit versus the last commit. So a few lines have been changed here. You can see on the very far right navigation scroll bar the green block showing the addition of code. There are no deletions at this point, which would normally be shown in red. We can try doing that now by deleting a line of code from the file, pressing Ctrl S to save, and refreshing the change on the left. The deletion is now shown on the left being red, and on the right hashed lines where that line number no longer exists. We can stage the file by pressing the add symbol, and then to commit we type in a message as we would before with the git add, the git commit messages. When we have finished creating our commit message, we simply click on the tick above the text box. This will commit the message to the local machine. So we would continue our workflow, coding and committing as we go. So in this example, we will stage a few commits and then push them all up at once. We've made our change. We can check and stage the change, create another commit message as before, and click on the tick to add that locally. At the bottom, you can now see next to the main branch that we are 2 commits ahead of the remote branch. And within the terminal, if we press enter, you can see we are also 2 ahead, with git status showing 2 ahead. Returning to Visual Studio Code, we will add some more content to the README file, and also we will explore the integrated terminal that comes with Visual Studio Code. The integrated terminal is very similar to the Windows terminal, but is built into the tool itself. This means we don't need to keep changing windows, and again keeps our flow quick. View Terminal will launch the integrated terminal. It will appear at the bottom of the screen by default and will look very familiar with the git status being displayed. We can do a status here, and we can use the same flow as before if we wanted to use the terminal rather than using the Visual Studio UI with a git add and a git commit with our message. You can see that at the bottom left next to the branch, it shows that we are 3 ahead, and the terminal also showing 3 ahead. There are many ways to operate, and it's what works best for you. For now, we will simply use Visual Studio Code. Clicking the 3 ahead will ask if we wish to push all of our commits to the main, and you can say yes, or show me later. We will say yes. Those changes are pushed to GitHub. You can see by the spinning circle. And we're asked again, would we like to periodically pull code down from GitHub? We can say yes, no, but we'll ask later. Returning to github.com, we can refresh the repository and now see that we are 5 commits ahead, with the very last commit being shown as the latest change. The README file has been updated and contains all of the changes that we have made. By clicking the commits, we can see that all of the local commits have been pushed up in the order that we made them on the machine itself. Next to one, there are 3 ellipses. Clicking this will show the additional message that we added. This allows us to add more content to make it clearer what each commit does. We're done with this dummy repo. So we will exit from Visual Studio Code. We will delete the repository with settings, scrolling down into the danger zone. You need to be very careful here, it goes without saying, and delete this repository. We will be prompted to type in the repository name in full. This is to ensure that we do not accidentally delete a repository. There is no going back at this stage, so really make sure this is the right repository. Type in the name and click I understand. The repository will then be deleted from github.com. If we look at our repositories, we can either click repositories or go through the profile. You will see that the repository has now been removed, leaving just the original repositories there. We will also delete the folder from our local machine as we no longer need this, and we'll be creating new repositories in future lessons. I hope you found that useful, and we will be back again very soon.